Bear cub was held in an illegal lab for cruel testing. What this baby did was shocking. Let us know where you're watching from. If you love my content, consider supporting it with a super thanks. Also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It'll help us to remain in touch with amazing people like you. The morning air carried an unusual silence through the dense pine forest surrounding Millbrook Valley. Dr. Savannah Reed pushed through the thick underbrush, her boots crunching on fallen leaves as she followed a narrow trail that shouldn't have existed. 3 weeks ago, environmental sensors in this protected area had detected strange chemical readings. 3 weeks ago, the local wildlife department had asked her to investigate, but nothing could have prepared her for what she would find. Hidden behind a wall of carefully arranged branches and camouflage netting stood a concrete building that looked like it had been dropped from another world. No permits existed for construction in this area. No company had filed any environmental impact reports. The structure simply existed, humming quietly with electrical power that came from nowhere she could see. Savannah crept closer, her heart pounding against her ribs. Through a small window, she caught her first glimpse inside. Rows of metal cages lined the walls. But these weren't ordinary animal enclosures. They were fitted with monitoring equipment, IV drips, and devices she couldn't identify. And in the corner cage, barely visible in the harsh fluorescent light, something small and dark was moving. A bear cub. The tiny creature couldn't have been more than 6 months old. Its fur, once probably a rich brown, was patchy and dull. Tubes snaked from its tiny body to machines that blinked and hummed with cold efficiency. When the cub lifted its head, Savannah saw something that made her stomach turn. Its eyes held a sadness that no wild animal should ever know. She fumbled for her phone, but her hands were shaking too violently to dial. This wasn't just illegal, it was monstrous. Who would do this to a baby bear? And more importantly, how long had this been going on? The sound of approaching footsteps froze her in place. Through the window, she watched 2 figures in white lab coats enter the room. One was a tall man with silver hair who moved with the confidence of someone in charge. The other was younger, a woman who kept glancing nervously at the cages as if she was fighting her own conscience. Subject B47 shows remarkable resilience, the man was saying as he approached the bear cub's cage. Despite the pain threshold tests, it continues to respond to our stimuli. Pain threshold tests. Savannah felt bile rise in her throat. The younger woman hesitated. Dr. Morrison, perhaps we should consider whether what, Dr. Chen? His voice turned sharp. Whether we should let sentiment cloud our scientific judgment. The pharmaceutical applications of what we're learning here could save thousands of human lives. But it's just a baby, Dr. Chen whispered, barely audible through the glass. Dr. Morrison's laugh was cold. It's a test subject, nothing more, nothing less. As Savannah watched in horror, Dr. Morrison produced a syringe filled with a blue liquid. The bear cub seemed to sense what was coming. It pressed itself against the back of its cage, letting out a sound that was part whimper, part plea. The sound cut through Savannah like a knife. She had to do something. But before she could move, she heard another sound that shouldn't have been there. The soft babbling of a human baby echoed from somewhere nearby. Confusion flooded through her. A baby? Out here in the middle of nowhere? The lab techs heard it too. Dr. Morrison froze, syringe still in hand, and exchanged a sharp look with Dr. Chen. Did you hear that? The babbling came again, closer this time. Sweet, innocent sounds that seemed impossibly out of place in this nightmare setting. Stay here, Doctor, Morrison ordered Dr. Chen. Continue with the procedure. I'll handle this. As he strode toward the exit, Savannah scrambled backward into the underbrush. Her mind was racing. A baby meant parents. Parents meant witnesses. And witnesses meant this horrific operation was about to be exposed. But as she crouched behind a fallen log, watching Dr. Morrison disappear around the corner of the building, she realized something that made her blood run cold. The babbling had stopped. Completely. Not gradually, like a child being led away by parents. Just stopped. The silence that followed felt heavier than before. Through the window, she could see Dr. Chen standing motionless beside the bear cub's cage, the syringe still in her trembling hand. The cub had curled into the smallest ball possible, as if trying to disappear entirely. Then, cutting through the oppressive quiet, came a sound that changed everything. A baby's cry. Not babbling or cooing, but a sharp, distressed cry that spoke of fear and confusion. And it was coming from inside the building. Savannah's hands clenched into fists. Whatever was happening here was worse than animal cruelty. Much worse. She pressed herself closer to the window, desperately trying to see more of the facility's interior. The building was larger than it appeared from outside. There were doors leading to other rooms. Other sections she couldn't see. Other cages. The realization hit her like a physical blow. This wasn't just about animal testing. The cry that had just echoed through the building belonged to a human baby. A baby that, like the bear cub, was trapped in this house of horrors. Dr. Chen must have heard the cry too, because she suddenly set down the syringe and rushed toward one of the doors Savannah couldn't see. Her movements were frantic, desperate, as if she was fighting against something she'd been forced to accept but could no longer stomach. "Please, no!" Dr. Chen's voice drifted through the walls. "The infant can't take any more tests today. Look at the readings. The readings are exactly why we need to continue." Dr. Morrison's voice was closer now, probably just beyond Savannah's line of sight. "The comparative data between the human infant and the bear cub is unprecedented. Do you understand what we're on the verge of discovering? Comparative data. Human infant. Bear cub." The full scope of what she was witnessing crashed over Savannah like a tidal wave. They weren't just testing on animals. They were comparing the responses between a baby bear and a human baby, side by side, pain threshold by pain threshold. She had stumbled onto something so evil, so fundamentally wrong, that her mind struggled to process it. But as she crouched there in the dirt, listening to the sounds of two innocent babies being treated like laboratory equipment, one thing became crystal clear. She wasn't leaving without them. Both of them. Savannah pulled out her phone again, this time forcing her trembling fingers to work. Emergency services first, then the State Wildlife Department, then the FBI. But as she started to dial, a hand clamped down on her shoulder with crushing force. Well, what do we have here?" The voice belonged to Dr. Morrison, but now she could hear it clearly without the barrier of glass and concrete. It was cultured, educated, and absolutely without warmth. She spun around to find herself staring up at a man whose appearance was as unsettling as his voice. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his lab coat pristine white, but his eyes held the same cold calculation she'd seen in the way he handled the bear cub. "Dr. Savannah Reed, I presume?" When she didn't respond, his smile grew wider. "Oh, yes, we know exactly who you are. Environmental scientist, wildlife protection advocate, recently divorced, lives alone in that little cabin about 5 miles west of here." Terror crept up Savannah's spine like ice water. They'd been watching her. "Let me go. People know where I am." "No, Dr. Reed, they don't." Dr. Morrison's grip tightened. "You see, the beauty of working in a protected forest is that cell phone signals are unreliable at best. Your last ping to any cell tower was over 2 hours ago near the main road. As far as anyone knows, you simply went for a hike and got lost." Savannah tried to pull away, but Morrison was stronger than his lean frame suggested. "You can't just disappear people. This is 2025, not the Dark Ages." "Disappear? Who said anything about disappearing?" His laugh was like breaking glass. "You're going to join our research project, Dr. Reed, voluntarily, of course." Before she could ask what he meant, Morrison nodded to someone behind her. Pain exploded across the back of her skull, and the world tilted sideways. As consciousness slipped away, the last thing she heard was the distant crying of babies, both human and bear, echoing through the trees. When Savannah woke up, everything was white. White walls, white ceiling, white sheets on the narrow bed where she lay. For a moment, she wondered if she was in a hospital. Then the memories came flooding back, and she sat up so quickly that her head spun. She wasn't in a hospital. She was in a cell. The room was small, maybe 8 feet by 10, with a single door that had no handle on the inside. A small window near the ceiling let in natural light, but it was too high and too narrow for escape. The only furniture was the bed, a small table, and a chair that looked like it belonged in a medical facility. "Ah, you're awake." Dr. Morrison's voice came through a speaker hidden somewhere in the ceiling. "Excellent. We have so much to discuss." "Where are the babies?" Savannah's voice came out as a croak. Her throat felt like sandpaper. "Safe and sound, I assure you, and about to help us make a breakthrough that will change the world." A section of the white wall slid away, revealing that it was actually a window. On the other side was an observation room, where Dr. Morrison sat at a control panel. Monitors lined the walls, showing various charts and data streams that Savannah couldn't interpret from this distance. "You see, Dr. Reed, you've stumbled onto something far more important than simple animal testing." Morrison leaned forward, his eyes gleaming with an enthusiasm that made Savannah's skin crawl. "We're conducting the first comprehensive study of pain response and cognitive development across species barriers. You're torturing babies. We're advancing science. The applications for what we're learning are limitless. Imagine being able to understand exactly how pain works, how consciousness develops, how trauma affects the developing mind. We could revolutionize medicine, psychology, neuroscience." Savannah pressed her face against the glass. "And you think that justifies what you're doing to those innocent creatures?" "Innocent?" Morrison stood up, beginning to pace. "Dr. Reed, nature itself is cruel. Baby animals die horrible deaths in the wild every day. Baby humans suffer and die from diseases we could prevent if we had better understanding of pain and suffering. We're simply controlling the variables." "Where did you get them?" "The babies?" Morrison's smile returned. "The bear cub was easy. We have people who monitor denning sites. The mother was relocated after she became too comfortable near human settlements. Unfortunately, she didn't survive the relocation process. The cub had nowhere to go." "And the human baby?" For the first time, Morrison's expression flickered. Just for a moment, something that might have been discomfort crossed his features. "Private adoption. The birth mother was told the child had died during delivery. She never knew otherwise." The horror of what he was saying hit Savannah like a physical blow. "You stole someone's baby. You told a mother her child was dead. We saved a child from a life of poverty and drug addiction," Morrison snapped. "The birth mother was 16, homeless, addicted to methamphetamines. The child is better off here, contributing to something meaningful. Contributing to torture. Contributing to the advancement of human knowledge." Morrison sat back down, his composure returning. "But we're not here to debate ethics, Dr. Reed. We're here to discuss your future." A chill ran down Savannah's spine. "My future? You have impressive credentials. A PhD in environmental science, published research in several prestigious journals, a reputation for thoroughness and attention to detail. We could use someone with your skills. I would never—" "Oh, but you will." Morrison's voice took on a tone of absolute certainty. "You see, Dr. Reed, you have a choice to make. You can join our research team voluntarily, help us monitor the psychological and physiological responses of our subjects, document our findings, or ... He gestured to one of the monitors Savannah couldn't see clearly. "Or you can become a subject yourself. We've been curious about how adult human responses to pain stimuli compare to infant responses. You could help us answer that question." Savannah's hands clenched into fists. "You're insane." "I'm a scientist pursuing knowledge at any cost. The greatest discoveries in human history required sacrifice. The development of vaccines, surgical procedures, psychological treatments, all built on the suffering of test subjects. Those were voluntary participants, or at least experiments done with consent." "Were they?" Morrison tilted his head. "The prisoners who were infected with malaria to test quinine treatments? The mental patients who were subjected to lobotomies to understand brain function? The soldiers who were dosed with LSD without their knowledge? History is written by the victors, Dr. Reed, and we will be the victors." Through the glass, Savannah could see Dr. Chen enter the observation room. She looked exhausted, her hair disheveled, her lab coat wrinkled. She approached Morrison hesitantly. "Doctor, Morrison, we need to talk. The infant's vital signs are becoming unstable." Morrison waved her away. "Not now, Dr. Chen. Can't you see I'm conducting an interview?" "Sir, with respect, this can't wait. If we don't give both subjects a rest period, we risk losing them entirely." "Losing them?" Morrison's voice turned dangerous. "Dr. Chen, are you suggesting that our subjects are more valuable than our research?" Dr. Chen glanced at Savannah through the window, then back at Morrison. "I'm suggesting that dead subjects provide no useful data. And I'm reminding you that we have backup subjects readily available." The casual way he said it made Savannah's blood run cold. Backup subjects. As if babies were laboratory equipment that could be easily replaced. Dr. Chen's face went pale. "Sir, we agreed that this project would involve minimal subjects. The approval from our sponsor was based on that understanding. Our sponsors will be pleased with results, regardless of methods." Morrison stood up, towering over the smaller woman. "Dr. Chen, I'm beginning to question your commitment to this project." "My commitment to science is unwavering. My commitment to unnecessary cruelty is non-existent." The tension in the observation room was electric. Savannah pressed closer to the glass, sensing that something important was happening. Dr. Chen was either brave enough or desperate enough to challenge Morrison directly. "Unnecessary cruelty?" Morrison's laugh was bitter. "Dr. Chen, cruelty is a human concept. We are conducting research. If our subjects experience discomfort, that discomfort is data. Every cry, every physiological response, every change in brain chemistry, it's all information that brings us closer to understanding the fundamental nature of consciousness and pain." "They're babies," Dr. Chen whispered. "Look at them through that window. Really, look at them. They're not subjects. They're living creatures capable of suffering." Morrison moved faster than Savannah thought possible. His hand shot out and grabbed Dr. Chen by the throat, slamming her against the wall. Through the speaker system, Savannah could hear every word clearly. "Dr. Chen, you seem to have forgotten that you are as much a prisoner here as our subjects. You volunteered for this project when your funding at the university was cut. You signed confidentiality agreements that would land you in prison for the rest of your life if you ever spoke about our work. And you seem to have forgotten that I have family who depend on you returning home safely." Dr. Chen's eyes went wide with terror. "My daughter is safe at her boarding school, yes, for now. But accidents happen, Dr. Chen, especially to the children of people who can't keep their scientific objectivity." Savannah felt sick. They had threatened Dr. Chen's child to ensure her cooperation. How many people were trapped in this nightmare? How long had it been going on? Morrison released Dr. Chen, who slumped against the wall, gasping. "Now, return to the laboratory and continue with today's protocols. And Dr. Chen, no more disruptions." Dr. Chen nodded silently and left the observation room. Morrison straightened his lab coat and turned back to Savannah with a smile that never reached his eyes. "As you can see, Dr. Reed, everyone here has their reasons for cooperation. What will yours be?" Before Savannah could answer, an alarm began blaring throughout the facility. Red lights flashed in the corners of her cell, and Morrison's smile vanished instantly. He spun toward his monitors, frantically typing commands into his computer. "What's happening?" Savannah called through the glass. Morrison ignored her, speaking rapidly into a radio handset. "Security team to Sector 7 immediately. We have a breach in the containment area." Containment area. As if the babies were dangerous animals instead of victims. But then Savannah heard something that made her heart leap. Through the walls, through the alarm, she could hear what sounded like growling. Not the small, weak sounds of a baby bear. Deep, adult growling that seemed to come from something much larger and much angrier. Morrison's face had gone white. How did it get past the perimeter? The animal was supposed to be destroyed weeks ago. "What animal?" Savannah shouted. Morrison finally looked at her, and for the first time she saw genuine fear in his eyes. "The mother bear. The one we told you died during relocation." Savannah's heart pounded. "She's alive?" "She's been searching for her cub for 3 months. We've been tracking her through the forest, but she's proved unusually determined." The growling was getting closer. Along with it, Savannah could hear sounds of destruction. Metal screeching, glass breaking, equipment being smashed. "She's in the building," Morrison said, more to himself than to Savannah. "She's actually in the building." And suddenly, Savannah understood. The mother bear hadn't given up searching for her stolen cub. For 3 months, she had been hunting, tracking, following every scent and sound until she found this place. And now, she was here to take back what belonged to her. The alarms continued to blare as crashes and roars echoed through the facility. Morrison was shouting orders into his radio, but Savannah could barely hear him over the sound of her own racing heart. The mother bear had found them, and she was coming. The facility shuddered as something massive collided with the outer walls. Morrison was frantically typing commands into his computer while barking orders through his radio. "All personnel to emergency stations. Seal off sections B through F. Activate the neurotoxin dispensers in the main corridor." "Neurotoxin?" Savannah pressed against the glass. "You can't kill her. She's just trying to get her baby back." "That animal is destroying millions of dollars worth of equipment," Morrison snarled without looking at her, "not to mention potentially exposing our operation to the outside world." Another crash echoed through the building, followed by the sound of splintering wood and twisted metal. Emergency lighting flickered on as the main power grid fluctuated. Through her small window, Savannah could see security personnel running across the compound with tranquilizer guns and what looked like electric prods. "Status report," Morrison shouted into his radio. "Sir, the bear has breached the outer laboratories. She's following her nose, sir, heading straight for the containment areas." Of course she was. 3 months of searching, and now she could smell her cub. Nothing was going to stop her from reaching her baby. "Deploy the sonic barriers. Full intensity." "Sir, the sonic barriers are dangerous to human personnel." "I don't care about personnel right now." Morrison's composed facade was cracking. "Deploy them." High-pitched whining filled the air as speakers throughout the facility activated. The sound was so intense it made Savannah's teeth ache even through the walls of her cell. But it didn't seem to be slowing down the bear's approach. If anything, the crashes were getting louder, more violent. Dr. Chen burst back into the observation room, her face flushed and panicked. "Doctor, Morrison, we need to evacuate the subjects. The bear is heading directly toward their holding area." "Absolutely not. We're not abandoning years of research because of one animal." "Sir, if the bear reaches the babies while they're still connected to the monitoring equipment, the babies will be fine. They're in reinforced enclosures." Dr. Chen stared at him in disbelief. "Those cages weren't designed to withstand an angry mother bear. We need to move them to a secure location." "The only secure location is right where they are." Morrison's voice had taken on a manic edge. "Dr. Chen, take a security team to the containment area. If that animal gets within 50 feet of our subjects, shoot it." "I can't do that." "You will do that, or I'll have you shot alongside the bear." The threat hung in the air like poison. Dr. Chen's face went white as she realized Morrison wasn't bluffing. She nodded slowly and left the room again, her shoulders slumped in defeat. Savannah watched the exchange with growing horror. Morrison wasn't just cruel, he was completely unhinged. His obsession with his research had overridden any sense of humanity or reason. The building shook again, and this time the lights went out completely. Emergency power kicked in a moment later, bathing everything in an eerie red glow. Morrison's computer screens flickered and several went dark completely. "Sir!" A voice crackled through the radio. "The bear has reached the main corridor. She's... Oh, God!" "What? Report?" "Sir, she's not alone." Morrison froze. "What do you mean she's not alone?" "There's another bear with her, sir, and something else. In the shadows. We can't get a clear visual." Savannah felt her heart skip a beat. Another bear? But that didn't make sense. The reports had said the father bear had been driven off during the initial capture. "Get me a visual," Morrison screamed into the radio. "I want eyes on that corridor now." One of his remaining monitors flickered to life, showing a grainy black and white image of a hallway. At first, Savannah could only see shadows and emergency lighting. Then movement caught her eye. The mother bear was massive, easily 400 pounds of muscle and fury. Her brown fur was matted with mud and debris from breaking through the facility's outer defenses. But behind her, partially hidden in the shadows, was something even more unexpected. It wasn't another bear, it was a person. A tall figure in dark clothing was moving along the corridor behind the bear, keeping pace with her as if they were working together? That was impossible. Wild bears didn't cooperate with humans, especially in situations like this. "Who is that?" Savannah called out. "Morrison, who is that person with the bear?" Morrison was staring at the monitor with an expression of pure bewilderment. "That's impossible. Bears don't, humans can't, this doesn't make scientific sense." The figure in the shadows moved closer to the camera, and for a brief moment Savannah caught a glimpse of their face. It was a woman, perhaps in her 30s, with long dark hair and clothing that looked like it hadn't been changed in weeks. But what struck Savannah most were her eyes. Even through the low-quality monitor, she could see an intensity there that matched the bear's own fierce determination. "Computer, identify unknown human subject," Morrison commanded. The AI system processed for a moment before responding in a flat electronic voice. "No match found in personnel database. Facial recognition scan indicates 73% probability subject has been living outdoors for extended period, based on facial exposure patterns and muscle tone." Living outdoors. For an extended period, following the bear. "My God," Savannah whispered. "She's been tracking with the bear. This woman has been helping the mother bear search for her cub." Morrison's face contorted with rage. "Impossible! Humans and wild animals don't form partnerships. It violates every principle of behavioral psychology." But even as he spoke, they watched the woman place a gentle hand on the bear's flank, seeming to communicate something to the massive animal. The bear paused, tilted her head as if listening, then continued forward with what appeared to be renewed purpose. "Sir, they're approaching the containment area," the radio crackled. "Dr. Chen's team is in position, but, sir, some of the team members are refusing to fire on the subjects." "What do you mean, refusing?" "The woman with the bear. She's talking to our people. Whatever she's saying, it's affecting them." Morrison grabbed binoculars from his desk and moved to a window that gave him a direct view into the containment area. Savannah could see him adjusting the focus frantically. She's showing them something," he muttered. "What is she showing them?" The answer came through the radio a moment later. "Sir, she has photographs, pictures of the bear cub from before it was captured, and pictures of the human baby, too." Savannah's blood ran cold. How could she possibly have pictures of the human baby? Morrison lowered the binoculars slowly, his face draining of color. Unless what? Unless she's the birth mother. The words hung in the air like an explosion waiting to happen. The teenage mother they'd told the baby had died. The homeless, addicted woman Morrison had dismissed so casually. She hadn't just accepted their lie and moved on with her life. She'd spent 3 months in the wilderness, getting clean, getting strong, and somehow forming an alliance with another mother whose child had been stolen. "Computer," Morrison said, his voice barely a whisper. "Run enhanced facial recognition on unknown subject. Cross-reference with local missing persons reports from past 6 months." The system hummed for several seconds. "Match found. Subject identified as Avery Johnson, age 17. Reported missing from Millbrook Valley General Hospital 3 months ago after apparent psychological break following stillbirth complications." Stillbirth complications, the lie they'd told her. "She didn't have a psychological break," Savannah said quietly. She knew. Somehow, she knew her baby was alive. Morrison was frantically working at his computer. "Impossible. We forged all the documentation. The death certificate was filed. The body was cremated." "Whose body?" Morrison's typing stopped. For a moment, he just stared at the screen. We used a miscarried fetus from another patient. Similar gestational age, the documentation was perfect." "But she knew," Savannah pressed. "A mother knows her own child." Through the monitor, they watched as Avery Johnson showed the photographs to each member of Dr. Chen's security team. One by one, the armed men and women lowered their weapons. Some of them were crying. "This is impossible," Morrison kept repeating. "Human behavioral patterns don't account for this kind of maternal intuition across species lines." Maybe that's because your understanding of human behavior is severely limited, Savannah shot back. The bear had reached the door to the containment area. Savannah could hear her sniffing deeply, her massive head moving back and forth as she searched for her cub's scent. When she found it, she let out a low, mournful sound that seemed to vibrate through the entire building. Avery Johnson stepped forward and placed both hands on the door. For a moment, she just stood there, her forehead pressed against the metal. Then she began to speak, her voice carrying clearly through the facility's intercom system. "I know you're in there, baby. Mommy's here. I never stopped looking for you." Morrison lunged for the intercom controls, but it was too late. Dr. Chen had apparently activated them from inside the containment area. "Dr. Chen!" Morrison screamed into the radio. "What do you think you're doing?" Dr. Chen's voice came back steady and clear. "Something I should have done months ago. I'm letting them in." "You'll be killed. That bear will tear you apart." "No, she won't, because I'm giving her back her baby." The sound of electronic locks disengaging echoed through the building. Red lights stopped flashing and were replaced by normal fluorescent lighting. Through the observation room's speakers, Savannah could hear the containment area door opening. What happened next defied everything Morrison thought he knew about animal behavior. The mother bear entered the room slowly, almost reverently. Her massive form moved with surprising gentleness as she approached the cages lining the walls. Behind her, Avery Johnson followed, her eyes scanning each enclosure with desperate hope. Then the bear found her cub. The tiny bear, weakened by months of testing, managed to lift its head when it caught its mother's scent. The sound it made was heartbreaking, a small cry that spoke of pain, fear, and desperate relief all at once. The mother bear nuzzled the cage gently, making soft chuffing sounds that seemed to calm her cub immediately. Avery Johnson was crying openly now as she watched the reunion. With shaking hands, she began working at the cage's electronic lock. "Dr. Chen." Morrison's voice was dangerously low. "Step away from those cages immediately." Dr. Chen appeared on the monitor, standing between Morrison's security cameras and the mother and cub. "I can't do that, Doctor. Morrison, I won't do that anymore. You're destroying years of research. I'm ending years of torture." Avery had managed to open the bear cub's cage. The tiny animal fell, more than climbed into its mother's massive paws. The mother bear gathered her cub gently, examining every inch of its small body while making continuous soothing sounds. But Avery Johnson wasn't done. She was moving to another cage, one that Savannah couldn't see from her angle. "The human baby," Savannah breathed. Sure enough, moments later, Avery lifted a small bundle from the cage. Even through the poor quality monitor, Savannah could see that she was holding an infant. Her infant. The baby had been sedated for the tests. Savannah could tell from its limp posture and lack of crying. But as Avery held her child for the first time in 3 months, something seemed to awaken in the infant. Its tiny hand reached up toward its mother's face. "This is insane." Morrison was pacing frantically behind his control panel. "This violates every protocol, every safety measure. That bear could turn on them at any moment." But the bear showed no signs of aggression. Instead, she seemed to understand that Avery was like her, a mother reunited with her stolen child. The massive animal moved closer to Avery, positioning herself protectively between the young woman and the security cameras. Dr. Chen's voice came through the speakers again. "Dr. Morrison, it's over. I've documented everything, every test, every procedure, every lie we told to justify what we did here. I've uploaded it all to a secure server. If anything happens to me, to these mothers, or to these babies, That information goes directly to every news outlet and law enforcement agency in the state. Morrison's face was pure fury. Dr. Chen, you've just signed your daughter's death warrant. No, Dr. Chen replied calmly. I've signed yours. The observation room's main door burst open, and Morrison spun around to find himself facing 5 armed individuals in FBI tactical gear. The lead agent stepped forward, weapon trained on Morrison. Dr. Richard Morrison, you're under arrest for kidnapping, child endangerment, animal cruelty, and conspiracy to commit murder. Morrison's mouth fell open. How did you... Dr. Chen has been cooperating with federal authorities for the past 2 weeks, the agent explained, as handcuffs were placed on Morrison's wrists. Every conversation, every procedure, every threat you made was recorded and transmitted to our surveillance team. Savannah watched in amazement as more agents flooded the facility. Dr. Chen had been an undercover informant. She'd been gathering evidence while pretending to go along with Morrison's increasingly deranged experiments. What about the other personnel? Savannah called out as Morrison was led past her cell. Most of them were coerced, like Dr. Chen, the lead agent replied, approaching her door with an electronic key. Blackmail, threats against family members, fraudulent contracts that trapped them here. The few who participated willingly are being arrested now. As her cell door opened, Savannah stepped out into the main facility for the first time. The fluorescent light seemed harsh after her confinement, but the sight that greeted her in the containment area made everything worthwhile. Avery Johnson sat on the floor, holding her baby close while the mother bear and her cub rested nearby. Both babies were awake now, the human infant making soft cooing sounds while the bear cub nuzzled against its mother's fur. They're going to be okay, Dr. Chen said, approaching Savannah. She looked exhausted but relieved. Both babies are physically healthy despite what they've been through. The bear cub will need some rehabilitation before she can return to the wild with her mother, but her veterinary prognosis is excellent. And the human baby? Avery's baby is remarkably resilient. The sedatives will wear off completely within a few hours. There may be some developmental concerns to monitor, but given the short duration of the testing... Dr. Chen's voice trailed off as she fought back tears. They're going to be fine. Savannah looked at the scene before her. 2 mothers who had never given up hope, who had somehow found each other and fought back against unimaginable cruelty. The mother bear had taught the human mother to track and survive in the wilderness. In return, Avery had helped the bear understand human behavior and navigate human structures. How did they find each other? Savannah asked. Dr. Chen managed a weak smile. We never did figure that out completely. The best we can determine is that Avery was living rough in the same part of the forest where we relocated the mother bear after the capture. 2 mothers, both searching for their stolen babies. They must have recognized something in each other. As if sensing the conversation was about her, the mother bear lifted her massive head and looked directly at Savannah. For a moment, their eyes met across the space between them. In the bear's gaze, Savannah saw something she would remember for the rest of her life. Not just animal intelligence, but wisdom. The kind of wisdom that comes from love deep enough to drive someone through 3 months of wilderness, smart enough to forge an alliance across species lines, and strong enough to tear down walls to protect what mattered most. The bear chuffed once, as if in acknowledgement, then returned her attention to her cub. What happens now? Savannah asked. Now we heal, said a new voice. Avery Johnson had approached them, her baby sleeping peacefully in her arms. Up close, Savannah could see the toll the past 3 months had taken on the young woman. She was thin, scarred from living outdoors, and clearly exhausted. But her eyes were bright with fierce joy. I never stopped believing she was alive, Avery continued. Even when they showed me the death certificate, even when everyone told me I was having a breakdown, I knew. A mother knows. She looked down at the infant in her arms, and Savannah saw love so pure it was almost painful to witness. When I found her in the forest, Avery nodded toward the mother bear, I thought she was going to kill me. I was ready to die. But then I realized she was searching too. And she realized the same thing about me. How did you communicate with her? Avery smiled, the first genuinely happy expression Savannah had seen from anyone in this place. Grief speaks all languages. So does hope. Outside, Savannah could hear helicopters landing, medical teams, wildlife rehabilitators, and more law enforcement. The facility that had been a house of horrors for so long was finally being opened to light and air and justice. But in this moment, in this room, there was just the quiet sounds of reunited families. The bear cub had fallen asleep against its mother's warm fur. Avery's baby was making small, contented noises as she dozed in her mother's arms. Dr. Chen was giving her statement to federal agents, finally able to tell the complete truth about what had happened here. The other researchers who had been trapped in Morrison's web of coercion were being processed as both witnesses and victims. As for Morrison himself, Savannah could hear him shouting threats and demands from somewhere in the facility as he was prepared for transport to federal custody. His voice was growing more distant as they led him away from the place where his twisted vision of science had finally been stopped. Dr. Reed, one of the FBI agents, approached her. We'll need a complete statement from you as well, but the paramedics would like to check you over first. Savannah nodded, but didn't move immediately. She was still watching the two mothers with their babies, still trying to process everything she'd witnessed. It wasn't supposed to end this way, was it? She said quietly. Dr. Chen, overhearing, came to stand beside her. Number? In Morrison's mind, we were going to make revolutionary discoveries about pain and consciousness. We were going to publish papers that would change neuroscience forever. Instead, we learned that love is stronger than fear, that mothers, human and animal, will never stop fighting for their children, that some things are more important than scientific advancement. The mother bear shifted slightly, creating a better shelter for her sleeping cub with her massive body. Avery Johnson swayed gently back and forth, a universal motion of mothers soothing their babies. Dr. Chen, Savannah asked suddenly, your daughter, is she really safe? Dr. Chen's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were tears of relief. The FBI moved her to protective custody the day I agreed to help them. She's fine, she's safe, and after today, she'll stay safe. As the sun began to set outside the facility's windows, Savannah finally allowed herself to believe that the nightmare was really over. Morrison's illegal operation had been exposed and shut down. The babies were back with their mothers. The people who had been trapped in Morrison's web of threats and coercion were finally free. But more than that, something extraordinary had happened here. A story that started with unimaginable cruelty had ended with a demonstration of love so powerful it had literally brought down walls. Two mothers from different species had found each other, supported each other, and together had done what neither could have accomplished alone. They had fought against impossible odds and won. As the medical teams arrived to provide care for the babies and their mothers, as wildlife rehabilitation experts began planning the bear family's return to the wild, as law enforcement agents continued documenting the crimes that had been committed here, Savannah couldn't help but think that this was what real science looked like. Not the cold, calculating cruelty Morrison had called research, but the patient observation of love in action. the documentation of courage in the face of hopelessness, the study of what happened when someone refused to give up. The mother bear had spent 3 months in the wilderness, following scent trails and fighting through fatigue and hunger because her instincts told her that her baby was alive somewhere. Avery Johnson had done the same, driven by feelings that everyone told her were just trauma and delusion. They had been right, their babies had been alive, and together they had brought them home. That was worth more than any research paper. It was worth everything. But as Savannah stood there, watching the peaceful scene of reunited families, a nagging feeling tugged at the back of her mind. Something Morrison had said during his breakdown kept echoing through her thoughts. Backup subjects readily available. She found herself scanning the room, looking for anything they might have missed. The facility was larger than it appeared from outside. There had been multiple corridors, multiple sections. What if... Agent Williams? She approached the lead FBI agent who was coordinating the scene. Has your team searched the entire facility? Agent Williams looked up from his tablet. We've secured all the areas Dr. Chen identified in her reports. Is there something specific you're concerned about? Morrison mentioned backup subjects. What if there are other areas of the facility that Dr. Chen wasn't aware of? Williams frowned. Dr. Chen had access to the entire facility during her undercover operation. But what if Morrison was compartmentalizing, keeping some areas secret even from his own staff? Dr. Chen, overhearing the conversation, approached them with a troubled expression. Actually, there were areas Morrison restricted me from. He said they were storage or mechanical rooms, but... She paused, as if remembering something important. There was always a strange humming sound from the basement levels. I assumed it was ventilation systems, but, Savannah pressed. But sometimes I thought I heard other sounds, very faint, like ... Dr. Chen's face went pale, like crying. Agent Williams immediately activated his radio. All teams, we need a complete structural scan of this facility. Check for hidden rooms, basement levels, anything not on the original blueprints. Within minutes, the search teams were reporting back. The facility did indeed have additional levels below ground that weren't reflected in any of the documentation they'd found. Concealed elevators, hidden stairwells, entire sections of the building that had been kept secret. How is that possible? Savannah asked as they prepared to descend to the lower levels. The facility was built in stages over several years, Agent Williams explained, studying the structural scans on his tablet. The upper levels were constructed first with proper permits and inspections, but then additional construction was done in secret. No permits, no official records. The elevator that took them down was hidden behind what appeared to be a supply closet wall. As they descended, Savannah felt her stomach clench with dread. If Morrison had hidden additional sections of his operation, what else might they find down here? The basement level was a maze of corridors and rooms, all painted the same sterile white as the upper facility. But unlike the upstairs area, this level felt different. Colder, more oppressive. The air carried a chemical smell that made Savannah's eyes water. Separate teams, Agent Williams ordered. Check every room, document everything. Savannah found herself paired with Dr. Chen and 2 other agents as they moved through the western corridor. The first few rooms they checked appeared to be genuine storage areas. Supplies, equipment, files. But as they moved deeper into the maze, they began finding things that made their blood run cold. Room after room of empty cages. Not just animal-sized cages, but enclosures designed for humans. Some were no larger than closets. Others were spacious enough to hold several people. All of them showed signs of recent use. "My God," Dr. Chen whispered, running her hand along the bars of one cage. "Morrison never told me about any of this." "What is this place?" one of the agents asked. But Savannah was afraid she already knew. They found the answer in a room at the end of the corridor. Unlike the others, this one was set up as an office. Monitors lined the walls, showing feeds from cameras throughout the basement level. Filing cabinets stood open, their contents scattered across the floor as if someone had left in a great hurry. Dr. Chen picked up a folder from the desk and gasped. Subject profiles. There are dozens of them. Savannah looked over her shoulder at the files. Each folder contained photographs, medical records, and detailed notes about test subjects. But these weren't just the bear cub and Avery's baby. There were profiles for dozens of other subjects, both human and animal. "Look at the dates," Dr. Chen said, her voice barely a whisper. "Some of these go back years. Morrison has been doing this for years." The photographs were heartbreaking. Children of various ages, elderly people, homeless individuals, all categorized by their research potential and acquisition difficulty. The animal subjects were equally varied: dogs, cats, primates, even exotic species like dolphins and elephants. "Where are they all?" Savannah asked. "If there are profiles for dozens of subjects, where are they?" Their answer came in the form of another agent's voice crackling through the radio. "Agent Williams, you need to see this. We've found another section. It's large." They followed Williams deeper into the basement, through a series of security doors that required both keycards and biometric scans to open. What they found on the other side defied comprehension. An enormous underground complex stretched out before them. Multiple levels, connected by catwalks and elevators. Hundreds of enclosures, observation rooms, surgical suites, and monitoring stations. It was like an entire underground city devoted to Morrison's twisted research. And it wasn't empty. As they stood on the main catwalk, looking out over the vast space, they could see movement in dozens of the enclosures, shapes moving in the shadows, the sound of voices, human voices, calling out from the depths. "Dear God," Agent Williams breathed. "How many people are down here?" "Sir," an agent's voice echoed from somewhere below. "We've got survivors, multiple survivors. We need medical teams down here immediately." What followed was organized chaos as FBI teams spread throughout the underground complex, documenting what they found and beginning the massive task of rescue and recovery. Medical teams rushed down from the surface as reports came in of survivors in various states of health. Savannah found herself in one of the rescue teams, helping to catalog the subjects they found. Each discovery was more heartbreaking than the last. In one section, they found a group of homeless individuals who had been reported missing over the past 2 years. They had been used as test subjects for experimental drugs and psychological manipulation techniques. Most were severely traumatized, barely able to communicate, but alive. In another area, children who had been reported as runaways were found in educational enclosures where they had been subjected to learning experiments and behavioral modification. Some had been here for over a year, but perhaps most disturbing was the animal section. Dozens of species, many of them endangered, had been subjected to experiments that made the treatment of the bear cub seem mild by comparison. Surgical modifications, genetic experimentations, cross-species implantations that defied all ethical boundaries. "How did no one know about this?" Savannah asked Dr. Chen as they watched rescue teams carefully removing a family of chimpanzees from an enclosure that had clearly been their prison for months. "Compartmentalization," Dr. Chen replied, tears streaming down her face. "Morrison never let any one person see the full scope of what he was doing. I thought I was part of a small, terrible experiment. I had no idea it was this massive. But the funding, the resources, this must have cost millions of dollars. Agent Williams, overhearing their conversation, approached with a grim expression. "We've been tracking Morrison's financials since the investigation began. He has backers, powerful ones, pharmaceutical companies, private research foundations, even some government contracts that were clearly fraudulent." Government contracts? Black budget items. Research into pain tolerance, psychological breaking points, biological weapons applications. Morrison was selling data to multiple buyers, telling each of them they were getting exclusive information. As the rescue operation continued through the night, the true scope of Morrison's operation became clear. It wasn't just a hidden laboratory where a few subjects were being tortured. It was an entire underground research complex that had been operating for years, funded by organizations that wanted to understand the limits of human and animal endurance. The subjects they rescued numbered in the hundreds, humans ranging in age from 5 to 75, animals representing dozens of species. All of them had been systematically tortured in the name of research that had no ethical oversight, no legal authority, and no justification beyond Morrison's obsession with understanding pain and consciousness. But as horrific as the discoveries were, there were also moments of incredible hope. Families were reunited with children who had been missing for years. Animals that had been thought extinct in the wild were found alive, though scarred by their experiences. People who had been written off as dead or permanently lost were found breathing, thinking, and capable of healing. Dr. Chen worked tirelessly through the night, helping to identify subjects and explain what treatments they had endured so the medical teams could provide appropriate care. Her knowledge of Morrison's methods proved invaluable in understanding what the survivors had been through. "I need to tell you something," Dr. Chen said to Savannah as dawn was breaking outside. They were taking a brief break in one of the upper-level offices while the rescue operations continued below. "What is it?" "The babies, the bear cub and Avery's child. They weren't Morrison's first subjects. They were his last." Savannah felt a chill run down her spine. "What do you mean?" Morrison was planning to shut down the entire operation. He had learned everything he could from the subjects down there. The data was compiled, the research was complete. He was going to eliminate all the evidence. "Eliminate?" Dr. Chen nodded grimly. "All of them. Every subject, human and animal. The plan was to make it look like a facility accident, gas leak, explosion, something that would destroy all evidence of what had been done here." "When?" "Next week. The bear cub and Avery's baby were going to be his final experiments. Comparative data on pain responses between related species in their youngest, most vulnerable state. Then, everything was going to be destroyed." The weight of that revelation settled over Savannah like a lid blanket. If the mother bear hadn't found the facility when she did, if Avery hadn't persisted in her search, if Dr. Chen hadn't contacted the FBI when she did, hundreds of innocent lives would have been lost. "There's something else, Doctor," Chen continued. "The mother bear wasn't the only animal that escaped Morrison's initial captures. We've detected at least 3 other adult bears in the surrounding forest, parents of cubs that were taken for the research program. They're all out there, searching for their babies. Some of the cubs we found down there don't have mothers to return to, but others—" Dr. Chen managed a small smile. "Others are going to have families waiting for them in the wild." As if summoned by their conversation, Agent Williams appeared in the doorway. "Dr. Reed, Dr. Chen, you'll want to see this." They followed him to one of the observation rooms where multiple monitors showed feeds from outside the facility. In the early morning light, they could see shapes moving through the forest around the building. Bears, multiple bears of different sizes, moving purposefully toward the facility. The rescue operations have attracted them, Williams explained. The scents, the sounds, the activity. They seem to sense that something important is happening here. On one monitor, they watched a massive male bear emerge from the tree line and approach the area where medical teams were treating some of the rescued animals. The bear didn't show any aggression. Instead, he sat on his haunches and seemed to be waiting. "That's a father bear," Dr. Chen said quietly. "Look at the scars on his face. I remember Morrison mentioning that one of the adult males had fought the capture team. They said he was too dangerous to take alive. He's been out there all this time, looking for his cubs. They all have." Throughout the morning, more bears appeared. Some stayed at the forest edge, watching the activity around the facility. Others came closer, as if drawn by scents or sounds they recognized. The wildlife rehabilitation teams were amazed by their behavior. "In all my years of working with bears, I've never seen anything like this," one of the specialists told Savannah. "It's like they understand that this is a rescue operation. They're not threatening anyone. They're just waiting." The waiting paid off. As cubs were brought up from the underground complex, many of them were reunited with parents they'd been separated from for months or even years. The scenes were as emotionally powerful as anything Savannah had witnessed. Cubs running to parents on shaky legs. Adult bears carefully examining their young for signs of injury or illness. Families nuzzling each other as if to confirm that the reunion was real. "How do they know?" Savannah asked one of the wildlife experts. "How do the parents know their specific cubs after all this time?" "Scent, mostly. Bears have incredibly powerful olfactory senses. But beyond that," the expert shrugged, "I think it's the same thing that guided Avery Johnson to her baby. Some bonds are stronger than anything science can measure." By noon, the immediate rescue operations were winding down. The survivors had been transported to hospitals and rehabilitation centers. The animals were being cared for by wildlife specialists who would oversee their recovery and eventual return to the wild. The facility itself was being completely dismantled. Every piece of equipment cataloged as evidence, every room documented, every secret finally brought to light. Morrison, meanwhile, was facing a list of federal charges so long that his lawyers were already discussing plea bargains. The organizations that had funded his research were being investigated by multiple agencies. The entire network of illegal experimentation was being exposed and shut down. But for Savannah, the most meaningful moment came in the afternoon when she saw Avery Johnson and her baby being discharged from the medical unit. Avery looked completely different than she had just 24 hours earlier. Clean clothes, medical care, and most importantly, her baby, healthy and safe in her arms, had transformed her. She looked like what she was, a young mother who had fought through hell and won. "Are you going to be okay?" Savannah asked as they said goodbye. Avery looked down at her baby, then out at the forest where the mother bear and her cub had disappeared hours earlier. "You know what I learned out there in the wilderness, following her?" "What?" "I learned that love isn't something that just happens to you. It's something you choose to fight for every single day, no matter how impossible things seem." She adjusted her baby's blanket gently. "Morrison tried to convince me my baby was dead. Everyone tried to convince me I was delusional, but I knew better, and she knew too." "The mother bear?" "Both of us knew. Our babies were alive. They needed us, and we weren't going to stop until we found them." Avery smiled. The first truly peaceful expression Savannah had seen on anyone's face in days. That's what mothers do. We fight impossible odds because giving up isn't an option. As Avery and her baby were driven away to begin their new life together, Savannah reflected on everything that had happened. A routine environmental investigation had uncovered one of the most extensive illegal research operations in modern history. Hundreds of lives had been saved. Families had been reunited. Justice was being served. But more than that, she had witnessed something that restored her faith in the fundamental bonds that connect all living things: love between parent and child, the determination of mothers to protect their young, the possibility of alliances across seemingly impossible boundaries. Dr. Chen appeared beside her as they watched the final evidence being loaded into FBI trucks. "What will you do now?" Savannah asked. "I've been offered a position with the FBI," Dr. Chen replied, "working with their unit that investigates illegal animal trafficking and experimentation. Seems my experience here, as horrible as it was, has given me unique qualifications for that kind of work." "And your daughter?" Dr. Chen's smile was radiant. "She's coming home tomorrow. For the first time in months, I can hug her without being afraid that someone might hurt her because of choices I've made." As the sun began to set over the facility that would soon be completely demolished, Savannah took one last look at the forest where it had all begun. Somewhere out there, a mother bear was teaching her cub how to fish and forage and live free. Somewhere out there, other families were being reunited and learning to heal from trauma that should never have happened. And somewhere out there, Avery Johnson was reading bedtime stories to a baby who would grow up knowing that her mother had moved mountains to find her. Morrison's research had sought to understand pain and consciousness through systematic cruelty. But the real lesson about consciousness had come from witnessing the depth of love that drove two mothers to do the impossible. That was a scientific discovery worth everything. It proved that some things in the universe were indeed stronger than fear, more powerful than cruelty, and more persistent than despair. It proved that love, in its purest form, was the most formidable force in all of creation. And sometimes, when circumstances aligned and courage answered the call of desperation, love could literally tear down walls, cross species boundaries, and bring the lost ones home. That was the research Morrison never understood. That was the data that really mattered. As Savannah drove away from the site where so much suffering had occurred, but where even more healing had begun, she carried with her a story that would change how she saw the world forever. A story about a bear cub held in an illegal lab for cruel testing, and what a baby, both human and bear, did that was truly shocking. They had shocked the world with the power of hope. They had shocked a community with the strength of determination. They had shocked the scientific establishment with the revelation that the most important discoveries weren't about how much pain a creature could endure. They were about how much love a mother could give. And that, it turned out, was infinite. 3 years later, Dr. Savannah Reed stood at the edge of Millbrook Valley's new wildlife sanctuary, watching as a group of children from the local school listened intently to their guide. The sanctuary had been built on the land where Morrison's facility once stood, a place of healing constructed exactly where pain had once reigned. "And that's where the mother bear found her baby," the guide was explaining to the wide-eyed children. She had searched for 3 whole months, never giving up hope. One small girl raised her hand. "What happened to the baby bear?" The guide smiled. "Well, if you look very carefully toward the stream over there." The children gasped in delight as a young bear, now fully grown and healthy, emerged from the tree line with 2 cubs of her own. She was teaching them to fish, just as her mother had taught her after their reunion. "That's her," Savannah whispered to herself, feeling tears well up in her eyes. "That's Morrison's subject B-47. But she wasn't a subject anymore. She was free, wild, and continuing the cycle of family and protection that Morrison had tried so hard to break. A gentle touch on her shoulder made Savannah turn. Avery Johnson stood beside her, holding the hand of a beautiful 3-year-old girl with bright, curious eyes. "Mama, bears!" the little girl exclaimed, pointing toward the stream. "Yes, sweetheart," Avery said softly. "Those are the bears we told you about. The mama bear who helped us find each other." The little girl studied the bears seriously for a moment, then looked up at her mother. "The mama bear was brave?" "The bravest," Avery confirmed. "Sometimes mamas have to be very brave to keep their babies safe." "Like you?" Avery knelt down to her daughter's level. "Like me, like the mama bear, like all mamas everywhere who love their children more than anything in the world." Savannah watched this exchange with a heart so full she could barely speak. The little girl who had been stolen as an infant, who had survived Morrison's testing, who had been rescued by the combined efforts of an FBI informant, an environmental scientist, and 2 determined mothers, was now healthy, happy, and loved beyond measure. "How are you doing?" Savannah asked Avery quietly. "Good days and hard days," Avery replied honestly. "Therapy helps. Knowing that Morrison and his people can never hurt anyone again helps. But mostly, watching her grow up happy and healthy, that's what keeps me going." They stood together in comfortable silence, watching the children learn about the wildlife that the sanctuary now protected. Many of the animals here were survivors of Morrison's experiments, living proof that healing was possible even after the worst trauma. "Dr. Reed," a familiar voice called out. Dr. Chen approached, wearing casual clothes instead of a lab coat, looking more relaxed than Savannah had ever seen her. "Elena, it's good to see you. How's the new job?" Dr. Chen grinned. "Exhausting and rewarding. We shut down 2 more illegal facilities last month. Not as big as Morrison's operation, but still." She shrugged. "Every animal we save, every person we rescue. It feels like we're balancing the scales a little bit." "And your daughter?" "Thriving. She's actually here somewhere with the school group. This is her class field trip." Dr. Chen scanned the group of children until she spotted a girl with long dark hair who waved enthusiastically. "She wants to be a veterinarian when she grows up, says she wants to help animals like we did." Savannah felt a surge of pride. The next generation was learning from what had happened here, choosing careers that would protect rather than exploit. "Have you heard about Morrison?" Dr. Chen asked in a lower voice. Savannah nodded grimly. Life in prison, no possibility of parole, and the appeals keep getting denied. "Good," Avery said simply. "He can spend the rest of his life in a cage, thinking about all the families he tried to destroy." As if sensing the shift in conversation, Avery's daughter tugged on her mother's hand. "Mama, can we see the butterflies now?" "Of course, baby." As Avery and her daughter headed toward the butterfly garden, another section of the sanctuary dedicated to species recovery, Savannah and Dr. Chen continued their walk. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if the mother bear hadn't found the facility when she did?" Dr. Chen asked. Savannah considered the question. "I try not to, but sometimes I think about all the lives that were saved because one mother refused to give up hope." 2 mothers, Dr. Chen corrected. "Don't forget Avery." 2 mothers from different species who found a way to communicate across every barrier that should have separated them. Savannah stopped walking and turned to face Dr. Chen. In all of Morrison's research, in all his experiments and data collection, he never understood the most basic truth about consciousness, which is that love creates connections that science can barely begin to measure. The bond between parent and child, the empathy that drives someone to help a stranger in need, the determination that keeps you fighting even when logic says you should give up. Morrison saw all of that as weakness to be exploited. Dr. Chen nodded thoughtfully. But it turned out to be the strongest force in his entire twisted world. They had reached the memorial section of the sanctuary, a quiet grove where plaques honored all the victims of Morrison's experiments. Some bore names of recovered subjects who had survived. Others were marked simply as unknown, for those whose identities had been lost or who hadn't survived their ordeal. In the center of the grove stood a bronze statue that never failed to move Savannah to tears. It depicted a mother bear and a young woman, standing side by side, each protecting a small figure behind them. The inscription read, "To all mothers who refuse to surrender hope." "They want to interview me again," Dr. Chen said suddenly, "for the documentary they're making about the case. Will you do it?" "I think so. If it helps prevent something like this from happening again, if it makes people more aware of how these operations hide in plain sight." She trailed off. "Besides, I owe it to all the people who didn't make it out." Savannah understood. The survivors carried not just their own trauma, but the responsibility to speak for those who couldn't speak for themselves. A commotion near the education center caught their attention. The school group was gathering around something, excited voices carrying across the sanctuary grounds. "Look, look!" Children were calling out. Savannah and Dr. Chen hurried over to see what had caused the excitement. There, at the edge of the clearing, stood a massive bear. But this wasn't one of the sanctuary's residents. This was clearly a wild bear who had wandered onto the grounds. "Everyone, stay calm," the guide instructed quietly. "Back away slowly." But the bear showed no signs of aggression. Instead, she was looking directly at the group of children with what could only be described as curiosity. Her gaze moved from child to child until it settled on one particular little girl, Avery's daughter. The bear and the child regarded each other across the space between them. For a moment that seemed to stretch into eternity, there was perfect stillness. Then the bear did something extraordinary. She sat back on her haunches and made a soft chuffing sound. The same sound mother bears used to call to their cubs. Avery's daughter, with the fearlessness that only a 3-year-old could possess, waved at the bear. "Hi, Mama Bear," she said in her clear, sweet voice. The bear chuffed once more, then turned and ambled back into the forest. But not before pausing at the edge of the trees to look back one final time. "Was that?" Dr. Chen whispered. "The mother bear," Savannah confirmed, watching the spot where the magnificent creature had disappeared. "She came to see the little girl she helped save." Avery appeared at her daughter's side, having rushed over when she heard the commotion. "Are you okay, sweetheart?" "Mama, the bear said hello to me." Avery looked at Savannah with tears streaming down her face. She recognized her, didn't she? After all this time, she recognized her. "Some bonds transcend time," Savannah said softly. "Some connections are deeper than memory." As the school group continued their tour, and life at the sanctuary returned to its peaceful routine, Savannah remained at the edge of the forest. She thought about the journey that had brought them all to this moment, a journey that had started with cruelty and ended with hope. Morrison had believed that consciousness could be understood through the study of pain and suffering. He had built an empire of torture in service of that belief, but he had been fundamentally wrong. Consciousness wasn't about how much pain you could endure. It was about how much love you could give. It was about the connections that formed between beings who should have been strangers. It was about the determination to protect what mattered most, regardless of the cost. The real research had been happening all along, in every act of sacrifice, every moment of compassion, every refusal to surrender hope. The mother bear teaching her cub to fish. Avery Johnson raising her daughter with love instead of bitterness. Dr. Chen choosing to fight for justice despite the personal cost. The sanctuary staff caring for traumatized animals until they could trust again. That was the science that mattered. That was the data that would change the world. As Savannah finally turned to leave, she took one last look at the memorial grove where the bronze statue stood guard over the memory of those who had suffered and those who had survived. "Thank you," she whispered to the forest, to the sanctuary, to the mothers, both human and bear, who had refused to let evil have the final word. The wind through the trees carried her words away, but somehow she knew they had been heard. In the rustle of leaves, in the distant sound of children laughing, in the gentle splash of bears fishing in the stream, the answer came back. Love will always find a way. And in Millbrook Valley, where pain had once reigned but hope had triumphed, that truth lived on in every sunrise, every reunion, every moment when a mother's love proved stronger than the darkest human intentions. The bear cub who had been held in an illegal lab for cruel testing had indeed done something shocking. She had helped save them all.